This is David Preston, and this is the third and final video explanation of the different illustrations and maps that I have related to Mobile in the Civil War. Of course, the reason why Mobile was such an important target to the Union and why so many high-ranking Union officials wanted the capture of Mobile, especially the mouth of the Mobile Bay, was because of the successful blockade running that Mobile was known for. As a matter of fact, Mobile was one of the most successful blockade running ports in the Confederacy and actually garnered the nickname the back door to the Confederacy because of that success. The illustration that we have here is actually a two-page illustration of the USS Richmond on blockade duty off Mobile Bay. The USS Richmond would later participate in the Battle of Mobile Bay as a part of the Union fleet during that battle. And this is a Harper's Weekly illustration. This is another Harper's Weekly illustration, and this is showing the blockade runners using the cover of Fort Morgan before the fall of the bay to escape from the Union blockade and make its way down to Havana. Almost all of the blockade running that happened out of Mobile Bay ended up at the port of Havana in Cuba during the war, where smugglers and agents from other foreign nations would trade goods in exchange for supplies for the Confederate Army, as well as necessary food and other staples for the citizens of Mobile. Havana and Mobile have a long history of trade relations with each other that go back even to its founding, where Mobile was actually set up as a trading post with the Indians, with Havana to establish a trade route for this area to Havana. As a matter of fact, even today, Mobile and Havana, Cuba are sister cities. Unfortunately, because of the U.S. embargo against Cuba, we cannot take full advantage of that trade relationship. This is another Harper's Weekly illustration showing what it was like on the deck of the USS Richmond during a infamous Gulf storm. Probably not a hurricane, but an infamous Gulf storm nonetheless. As we all are accustomed to down here, we can get some pretty nasty storms along the Gulf, even if they're not hurricanes. This is an illustration of what it would look, the city of Mobile would have looked like before the war, or before the fall, excuse me. This was not taken during the land campaign or the Battle of Mobile Bay, but more a view of what Mobile would have looked like from a ship. And this is a Harper's Weekly illustration. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was illustrated in 1862, just to give you a point of reference to ensure that it was not a illustration done after the fall of the city or the fall of the bay. And of course, the ultimate prize in the Battle of Mobile Bay and the land campaign was the city of Mobile itself. This is a illustration. I don't know if I think this is from the official record of the war put out by the U.S. government, but it's a street map of the city of Mobile. And if you look carefully at the map, you can tell that that area of Mobile, what we would consider downtown today, which would be east of Broad Street to the river, hasn't really changed all that much. Neither has the direction of the major routes in and out of the city after the war. Of course, after the fall of Mobile Bay and all throughout the war, many cities had shortages of food, bread, coffee, and medical supplies. Well, they're getting towards the end of the war, after the fall of the bay, those shortages in Mobile increased dramatically. And this is an illustration. This is not a Harper's Weekly illustration, but this is an illustration of one of the infamous bread riots that happened throughout the South, that happened right here in Mobile during the war. What happened was the ladies, and these are mostly ladies that are in the riotous crowd, gathered on Spring Hill Avenue, marched down Spring Hill Avenue to Dolphin Street and down Dolphin Street to the U.S. Customs House and Courthouse, which is where the Trustmark Bank building is now, where they drop the moon pie off the side of the building every New Year's Eve. But the soldiers that you see fighting this riotous crowd are not soldiers from other areas of the Confederacy that were stationed in Mobile during the war. The soldiers you see fighting the ladies in this picture, are actually the Mobile Cadets, which was a home defense squad of mainly older men and men that were unfit for war and unfit for battle, formed their own home defense guards to kind of defend their own home cities. What happened was, when the bread riot started, General Maury, who was the Confederate general overseeing the defenses of Mobile, ordered another one of the regular army divisions to put down the riot, and they refused. They flat out refused a direct order from their superior officer. So General Maury, thinking that the ladies would not engage the men from Mobile in their riotous actions, sent the Mobile Cadets. Men that should have known better than to mess with an angry woman from Mobile. We all know that's just something you do not do. Because when an angry woman from Mobile has her mind set on something, there's no change in her mind and there is no getting in her way. As a matter of fact, whenever somebody comes over to my house and I showing them my collection, I like to point out that this right here just goes to show you don't mess with a Mobile woman, because gun or no gun, she will spank you if you mess with her. Does anybody else see where that woman is spanking that soldier for messing with her? I just think that's funny. That's interesting. What we have here is we have two illustrations from Harper's Weekly. This would have been after the surrender of the city by the mayor, without a shot being fired, mind you, illustrating what it would have looked like away from the explosion of the magazine in May of 1865, where the Union forces were stockpiling Confederate munitions in Mobile after the surrender of the city, after the surrender of General Taylor's forces north of the river. What was happening is they were collecting confiscated Confederate munitions, and they were storing them in a old cotton warehouse. Well, depending on what story you believe, and one of two things happened. Either Confederate saboteurs snuck into the warehouse and exploded the munitions, causing 8 city blocks to be leveled by that explosion. Or, if you believe the official record, the munitions were stored improperly and there was some sort of accident. Maybe the heat that Mobile is famous for heated up and it caused a spark that caused the explosion. Nobody really knows. All we really know is lots of people died. It leveled 8 city blocks. There was damage as far south as Government Street and Royal Street in the city. Now you have to remember this warehouse was located near where the current GM&O building is located, back behind that Exxon on Water Street. So if you can imagine 8 city blocks surrounding that warehouse just being leveled, and significant damage all the way down to where the convention center is now and the Explorium. Lots of people died, and a lot of the cotton that had been confiscated by the Union forces that they were going to use to finance the reconstruction and the rebuilding of the city and the state of Alabama was destroyed, which is one theory why it took so long for Mobile to recover and never really truly did recover from the Civil War. Here's another Harper's Weekly illustration of sights and sounds around Mobile Bay. And of course, the Confederates knew that the city of Mobile was a very strategic importance for themselves and for the Union forces, which is why they built a very intricate defense system around the western edge of the city. And of course, what we have here is we have diagrams and maps of what the readouts and read-ins would have looked like that the Confederates built around the western edge of the city, because they thought that the Union forces might actually attack the city from the west instead of from the water, because they felt they had the water defended so well that they felt like it would have been more advantageous to the Union forces to invade the city from the west instead of coming from the east or from the water. And of course, if you look here on this street map, you can see where those defenses were built. Right here. And of course, you can see, with permission, a remnant of one of the readouts behind a Mobile pulley works on Ann Street. So that line of defenses would have gone parallel, for most part, to Ann Street in Mobile. And then finally, what we have here, this isn't from the official record of the war or Harper's Weekly, but it does show you the upper defenses of the bay, including Spanish Fort and Blakely, Battery Hugie, Battery Tracy, along with the other water batteries, as well as the city of Mobile, which was the ultimate prize. This concludes the 3 video series that I have of my collection of maps and illustrations from Mobile related to the Civil War. This is not a complete collection, but it is as complete that I have accumulated so far, and I hope you enjoyed it.